I'm Ashley Hawkins, and I'm the manga librarian. And today, let's go ahead and talk about shonen. Specifically, we're going to talk about shonen battle manga. I didn't put this off because I hate shonen battle manga or I don't like it or whatever. I actually put it off because you're probably the most familiar with shonen battle manga. And I thought, well, I don't need to talk about it right away. I wanna let you know about stuff you know about less. But let's go ahead and get into shonen battle manga and what is it and what's its deal and what's going on here. So yeah, shonen battle manga. So I want to make like a distinction because here's the thing. Shonen is such a massive demographic category in terms of what gets published in shonen. And part of it is just that everything that doesn't fit into shoujo gets put into shonen, basically, or seinen josei. But comedy series get put into shonen. Like shoujo tends to have very specific things that happen inside of it, and you can kind of tell a shoujo series when you look at it. A shonen series is actually way more fluid in terms of it. It really is just demographics. It is not as helpful to say something is a shonen series as it is to say it's a shoujo series. So what I am really talking about is shonen battle manga. I am talking about your Narutos, I'm talking about your Dragon Balls, I'm talking about the stuff that my students and probably your students or your patrons are looking at the most and are asking for the most because for whatever reason it's the big money maker. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna say a few things. First off, I am not the biggest reader of shonen battle manga. There are some of them that I have read and enjoyed. Inuyasha. That might be it. There's probably more. Maybe as I go through, I'll go, oh, yes. But it's just, I'm not as prolific a reader of shonen battle stuff or a viewer of shonen battle stuff. Part of it is that shonen battle stuff tends to be the stuff that like goes on forever and ever 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 and ever, for like hundreds of volumes or whatever. Like One Piece is now past 1,000 chapters, and it's like such a time commitment that it's like daunting. And also, it's just a lot of the style, like the art style, doesn't appeal to me as much. And just the story style tends to not. And we'll talk about like why that story style doesn't always work for a reader like me, and works for other readers, and why it works for maybe some of our reluctant readers. So, let's get into it. So shonen manga, it literally just means boys manga, and it's marketed towards young teen males between the ages of 12 and 18. But as we all know, the target demographic is just the target demographic. And when what we actually see reading and consuming these things is a way wider range. And this is actually something that's interesting, I guess is a word for it. There are consumers of manga who will read shoujo and then also read shonen, but a lot of very diehard cis-het male readers of shonen will never touch a shoujo manga series just because it's labeled shoujo, and that's something to keep in mind. And it's annoying, and this could be its own video in and of itself. How toxic masculinity can really have an impact on manga and anime fandom, because it is there. And I think this is also a reason why I tend to exist less in shonen spaces, because it's just a little bit more inclined towards those particular ideals. That doesn't mean that the shonen manga itself is perpetuating it. It's something you need to be aware of, and something that I actively, in my anime club and in my work with students, try to work against, and try to have serious conversations with them about, so that they don't turn into that type of fan, and they have a more open mind about what they consume and how they are treating fans who like different things than them in the anime and manga community. But just be aware of it. And the thing to note is that shonen sells the best. It just does. It sells the best, and it makes the most money. I've talked before about how Kimetsu no Yaiba is the best-selling manga of all time. The film for Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, did outstandingly well despite being released in the middle of a pandemic. And there is a lot of clamoring here in the States from Kimetsu no Yaiba fans to get their hands on this film, and a lot of people are really excited to sit in a room with other people for 2.5 hours and watch that movie, which I guess I understand. I don't know. I'd rather stream it, but that's me, and my own anxiety. So anyway, let's talk about it. So shonen battle manga is characterized by high action, but also often there's a humorous sort of vein going through. Usually there are male protagonists, and the genre can actually fluctuate quite a bit. Although the battle element will always kind of be there, the setting can be wildly different. So you can have sort of a science fiction setting. So think of Dr. Stone has sort of a science fiction setting. There can be fantasy settings. There can be all sorts of settings. So, you know, My Hero Academia is a superhero story. Naruto is a sim is a ninja martial arts story. There can be like all these variations in settings, in genres and things, but the one thing that kind of unites them is this battle aspect. There's always a battle being fought, and there's always this goal of like reaching the top and becoming the strongest, and each battle will always raise the stakes a little bit more. There's a big emphasis on camaraderie between boys or men, either on teams or within like fighting groups. There's often like team ups, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of like, so there's also like another subgenre of, I mean, we have things like haiku. A lot of sports manga actually kind of fits within the battle manga format because, sports actually really fits very well into the formula, because you're going to start off kind of small as like a ragtag team, and then you're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger until you reach the championships to be the ultimate team. And there will be like fighting squads, or that's why like ninjas work really well. There's often team ups, and you're often working together against a common foe, although there will often be like sub storylines where like one person has to go out and fight on their own because there's a personal vendetta and they don't want to put the other people in their team or their friend group or their squadron at risk, so they're going to go out on their own and fight a battle, but the others will follow them, and in either they're going to get like super powered and like really in the middle of the fight, or the power of friendship will somehow save them. There's different variations. It really depends on what the mangaka is going for in terms of the story. There's this drive to better themselves, to become stronger, to like, there is like this, and not just stronger in terms of physically, but stronger mentally, emotionally, certain skills. Often they have like magic, quote unquote, sort of skills that they need to hone. It could be swordsmanship, it could be all sorts of things. There's like a bajillion type of things. It could even be like, they could be mecha often will fit into this. Mecha is technically a subcategory, I guess, of battle shonen. But it's the better one. Anyway. And there will be like these challenges to their abilities, skills, and maturity. And then there's like a lot of these values of like, trying to achieve like self-perfection, or self-discipline. There will be like a lot of like sacrifice, like making sacrifices on the behalf of your friends, on the behalf of humanity, on behalf of the weak, doing honorable service for society, your community, family, friends. So actually, I'm listing all this, and you're probably going like, okay, these are actually like all really honorable, good things. And yeah, they are. These are all like highly moral things that we should actually really encourage. There's a reason why our students are really drawn to these stories, and it's not just all the action. They emotionally engage with these characters because these are like very teenager concerns. They are, and there's a reason actually even why the Black community really connects with these stories. There's a documentary that was just put out a few days ago called Piccolo is Black. I'm going to see if the director has a direct link to it, because it aired as a live stream through FSU's film program. And it talked specifically about the Black community's engagement with a lot of these tropes and a lot of these specific ideas. And my community is 98% Black, and I see a lot of, when we talk about these ideas and what it is that my students like about particular stories, it isn't like, oh, it was so badass when he blasted this guy away. It's like, it was really important to me when he chose to protect his friends, when he wanted to avenge his fallen brother, or his dead family, or things like that. There are like really deep and meaningful reasons why shonen battle manga becomes really integral to people. So I know, like, I've kind of talked about and put a lot of hesitancy into like my enjoyment of shonen battle manga, but I also never begrudge anyone for liking it. And like I said, there are stories that I like. I personally really like Mecha, and Mecha is technically shonen battle. I really like that. There are things that are technically shonen battle manga and anime that I like. I just don't like it has more to do with art style for me, to be honest. And I think it's really important for me to like say, okay, there are things that are not my personal taste, but it's really important to acknowledge that there are things in these stories that are really valuable and really important to the people who do really like them. So, you know, Naruto, for example, which I've only read a little bit of. I'm not a huge, like, I've never been like a huge fan of it or anything, but I understand that the thing that really draws Naruto fans in is that it's really a story about outcasts who are proving themselves and are forming a camaraderie with each other and a bond with each other. And that in and of itself is highly valuable. So, you know, it's just like anything else. Like, there are a lot of books that I personally didn't vibe with, but I recommend them to students because I know that they have great value. So, you know, listen, we've also got to remember, like, shonen isn't made for me, and it's probably not made for you. If you're a school librarian watching this, you are probably in a similar demographic to me. You might be older than me. You know, it's really not made for us. It's made for our students. It's made for them. So, you know, it's not going to be something that we're going to sit down and read a ton of. But it's something we should be aware of and something we should have and should know about and appreciate what it is. So, let's talk a little bit about the history. Um, there was some shonen manga before World War II. I talked a little bit in my Jojo video about how we had that splitting of magazines in the early 1900s into shoujo and shonen, because we had the splitting of girls and boys things. Um, and one of the first shonen manga magazines was Shonen Sekai, and that was published from 1895 to 1914. And, you know, it existed. Manga has been around for a long period of time. And 1905 is kind of when we see the boom in the publishing of manga magazines. And so we've got Shonen Sekai. I talked about Shoujo Sekai. And then there was also Shonen Paku, which was more children's geared. But the real push towards what we know as shonen manga is post World War II and following the occupation of Japan by American forces. So the post World War II occupation of Japan had a huge impact on Japanese culture during the 1950s and beyond, and this included on manga. And I talked a little bit about girls in shoujo in the shoujo video if you're interested in that, but now we're talking about boys. And the modern format of shonen manga really shows up here with Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy. So what's interesting is you may remember that I talked about Osamu Tezuka as sort of a founding person in terms of shoujo. He's also a founding person for shonen. There's just similar roots there. Astro Boy is really a huge influence in terms of shonen and where it kind of grew into this big thing. And there was this focus on topics that were thought to interest boys. So we have science, technical, sci-fi topics. So we have robots, space travel, action adventure, and like between 1950 and 1969, this huge readership like evolves. And we see like a similar thing happen where, you know, the readership starts out as like this one specific group, and then as they age, it's widening because people don't really want to give up manga once they're into it. And in 1968, we see Weekly Shonen Jump. So Shonen Jump has been around since 1968. Shonen Jump is by and far the biggest influence on shonen. It's the best-selling manga magazine in Japan. I believe it's the best-selling worldwide in terms of just Shonen Jump is a major player in terms of the publication of manga. most of the bestsellers and most popular shonen series started in Shonen Jump. So we have Dragon Ball, Captain Tsubasa, Slam Dunk, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Hunter x Hunter, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I could keep listing, and they're all titles that you have heard and you probably have in your library. Here in America, they are published by Viz. This is why Viz has such a stronghold on the manga market, because they have the Shonen Jump licenses. It's like there's no competing with that, really. Kodansha's probably the only one who has anything near the catalog to do any competing. But yeah, now a lot of it's kind of published online. Obviously here in, like, I pay $1.99 for my Shonen Jump app. So a lot of it's published online and in applications. The mid-1980s to the mid-1990s was probably their most prolific, where they were publishing their big Tankobon volumes. Oh no, wait, Tankobon are the collected volumes, I'm sorry. In the big, I can't remember the name, I'm blanking. Tankobon is like this. But anyway, in their big anthology volumes, where there's like there's a chapter for each of the current ones. So in the 1980s and the 1990s, its circulation was at 6.53 million copies per week, with a total readership of 18 million people in Japan. That's huge in Japan. It's sold over 7.5 billion copies, and it's the best-selling comic or manga magazine ever. It outsells anything in America, anything anywhere. It is the best-selling of all time. In 2019, its circulation was 1.6 million copies per week, and that has a lot to. And the only reason why it's low is because of applications, because people are mostly reading online. When I was in Japan, I was constantly snooping on people reading on their way to work on their phone. Like, they were constantly reading manga, and I couldn't help myself. I was constantly like trying not to, because, you know, I'm trying to not be rude, but also, like, I'm so curious. Like, everyone's reading manga and everyone's reading it on their phones. So there's a lot. Shonen Jump is the biggie. So yeah, it starts in 1968. There's other magazines that run, obviously. They're not the only one. There's tons of them. I couldn't even list them. Trying to list them would be just a folly. There was some controversy regarding the variety of sexually explicit themes, and in 2010, so here's the thing. In about 2010, you actually see a restriction on what can be published in shonen, or shoujo. So what can be published according to the age groups that it's targeted at, the demographic groups. And so there's actually quite a bit of censorship in manga since 2010. And there's like several reasons for that. Some of them are kind of, the one of the big ones is actually because of something that there was a guy who, Tsutomu Miyazaki, who was called the otaku murderer, or the otaku killer, who murdered some people, some girls, and it kind of led to this restriction and this censorship, and it really impacted shonen especially. And I'll link Aki Dearest, who's a YouTuber. She has a pretty good rundown of the case and its impact on the anime community especially, which I think is a good way of addressing this. That's kind of a good way to approach in terms of helping you to understand like the kind of impact. So the thing is, like, there was a period of time where things got really like relaxed in the 90s, and then things got really not relaxed. There's actually a lot of stuff that you can't put in shonen and shoujo manga. You can't depict certain actions, or your characters can't do certain things. There's actually a whole sort of chapter in Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun, where they joke about like, oh, you have to like point out that, oh, these characters aren't smoking, these are candy cigarettes, they're not drinking, it's juice. There's like a lot of things that, depending on your target demographic, you can't do. So, which might be surprising to you. You might think that that's that doesn't vibe quite with what your understanding is, but it is pretty accurate. There is a marked difference between things that were published before 2010 and things after. So just kind of be aware of it. It is a thing. And I think a lot of people's understanding of what manga and anime comes from the before times, before the legislation was passed. And it's hard to say that isn't to say there aren't things that are, obviously there's mature stuff, and those things are seinen, and they are published in different magazines and whatever. There's still things that are objectifying to women. There are still things that are violent. There are still things you should know about, but anyway, the manga that are credited with setting the trends of popular shonen manga are Fist of the North Star, which is actually getting republished by Viz relatively soon. I actually have a galley that I need to look through. I think my husband's pretty excited about that one. And of course, Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is like the big trendsetter. And so in the 1980s, they kind of set the tone. They were influenced by martial arts films from Hong Kong action cinema, which is why my husband's really like into like Fist of the North Star, because he's really into that era of Hong Kong action cinema. So yeah, you have this boom in martial arts films, which then leads to this boom in shonen manga, which then creates this whole vibe. So there's this interesting sort of lineage we can follow. And almost everyone is gonna, like, every major mangaka working right now is going to tell you, who does battle shonen, is going to say that they are inspired by Toriyama, who is the mangaka behind Dragon Ball. Everyone says Dragon Ball is what inspired them. It's just because everybody's read it. It's universally popular. I really recommend making sure that you have one Dragon Ball series on your shelf. Particularly if you have black students or black patrons, you should have Dragon Ball. Absolutely. Or, just have Dragon Ball. It's very important to various communities, not just the black community. Although the black community has really embraced Dragon Ball and really loves Dragon Ball. Obviously, it's very important to Asian communities as well. Currently, the titles running in Shonen Jump are a kind of mix of things that have been running for a really long time, and then, newer titles. They kind of cycle through, try new things, and then what'll happen is something will gain a huge amount of popularity and then will, really blast off. But the ones that are their longest lasting right now are Black Clover, which I believe is going to be ending fairly soon. Dr. Stone, Hunter x Hunter, which has been running since 1998. Jujutsu Kaisen, which I'm sure you've heard plenty about. My Hero Academia, which word on the street is will be ending fairly soon. That's been running since 2014, so it's kind of surprising. But then there's also like several spin-off series that run in other magazines, and there's a good chance that Horikoshi Sensei will either do something new within the world or probably start another series once they're done here. One Piece, obviously, which has been running since 1997. And then there's other things that have been running fairly recently. And we'll just kind of see how trends kind of go. And they have like all these other spin-off magazines that run, and it's crazy. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at a circulation table, and it's always crazy to see like how much money certain series have made Shonen Jump. Like Saint Seiya has made so much. But yeah, it's always interesting to kind of take a look. would say, like, this is always a category of manga to be aware of, to know titles from. You probably, like I said, already know a bunch of titles. Titles I actually read. So JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I actually really like. I like that. Like I said, I was a big Inuyasha fan. I like Saint Seiya. Let's see. City Hunter isn't really shonen battle, but it is shonen, and it did run in Shonen Jump. I really like City Hunter. I like a lot of like classic 80s style stuff. I think that's also part of it, is just like a lot of modern stuff I'm not as into the aesthetic. Like you can tell, like I like Jojo, and I like these older things. Captain Tsubasa is really great. Things you may not have and should probably have. Slam Dunk. It's a basketball manga. It's it'll do really well. Try to have that. I would have, if you haven't heard about Chainsaw Man, I'd get Chainsaw Man. I really enjoyed Chainsaw Man. Burn the Witch has been pretty good. That's the new one by Tite Kubo. Jujutsu Kaisen, you've probably heard about, but you should probably get because it's super duper popular. Like I said, these are also like really easy buys. They're gonna circulate. They're gonna do really well. It's got Shonen Jump on it. It's tried and true. It's gonna do well. Obviously, I'm trusting that you've got things like The Promised Neverland, Kimetsu no Yaiba. You probably have some One Piece, some, like, you've probably got some of this stuff. These are easy buys. So, I've talked a lot. The sun is starting to absorb all my energy all of a sudden. I didn't even realize. So I've talked a lot. I hope this is helpful in some way. I think I went off on a few different tangents. I don't know if I've provided a ton of historical context, but also like, if you are really interested in the history of shonen manga, I would absolutely recommend. It's a book I've recommended before. It is Manga, the the world of Japanese comics. It's on the shelf behind me. I needed to double check. That is absolutely something I would recommend if you want more in-depth knowledge. I don't know the history of shonen the way that I know the history of shoujo. And yeah, there's so much content out there to find out more about shonen. I trust that you can figure it out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available, and I will see you in the next video.